All right, I started
That's awesome.
recording. All right, we're gonna share in the group. Um, loading. Preparing live streaming preview.
It's so, it's so serious. Oh my God.
It's so serious. I'm so scared.
It's like everything is loading, and you're just like, is this gonna work? Please, Facebook, don't screw me over.
Please don't. Okay, go live. Now it's setting up our webinar for Facebook.
Here you go. So much anticipation. I feel we need drum rolls
I know
in
there's
each.
like 5 steps, and every time I'm like, is it gonna work? Okay, it says done redirecting to Facebook Live. We are live, my friend. How's it going?
I'm doing amazing. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you for being here. You live in, where do you live again?
In Medellin, Colombia.
Okay, I knew that, but I looked when we hopped on, guys. Hey, everybody who's hopping on live. Team Traffic, super pumped to be here today. When Nehal and I hopped on earlier, I was like, where are you? Is that a co-working space? And that's his apartment in Colombia. So cool. So first off, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And your pup's here. um, Thanks again for doing this. Really excited to have you. Just a little backstory about Nehal. I think we had like an interesting meeting. Well, we had met before, I think at like a mini chats conference.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
I ran into you in October at an event, and we just randomly started chatting in the hallway, and you went like deep about bots and what you were doing with Facebook advertising. And I was like, all right, we got to be friends. And so that's how this relationship formed, and had you on Perpetual Traffic. We chat a lot on Instagram, and I just love the work that you do. So just to give everybody that's how I met this guy introduction.
The funny part is I was late and I slept in because I flew in that night, and I was like, oh my God, I'm late. And I saw you and I'm like, I got to harass you. So here we are.
Well, I'm glad you harassed me. Do you want to
Yeah.
tell everybody what you do?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook ads agency. So we do primarily Facebook and Instagram traffic, primarily for e-com and high ticket. And we're also working with media buyers and teaching them stuff too. But right now the primary focus is the agency. And so all of this kind of happened because we were doing a bunch of stuff with CBO, and we're doing primarily auto campaigns and traditional methods. And how we do a lot of our high budget campaigns is very different today than what we were doing 3 to 6 months ago, and it's very similar to what you guys are doing. So I definitely want to hear more about what some of the nuances you figured out, and I'm happy to share what we've done here as well.
Likewise, yeah. And hey to everybody who's hopping on. Nigel says hi, Jordan, John, Trent, Meryl. So we've got people hopping on here live. Everybody's excited about this. So this conversation is mostly going to be focused around CBO, so campaign budget optimization, which is something that most people in this group are familiar with. But I think, as you said, we're all still figuring this out together in terms of, I still use budget at the ad set level when I'm testing. And then I'll switch over to CBO for scale. But then scaling a CBO campaign is very different from the old school scaling of budget at the ad set level. So I definitely have my thoughts around this, and I'm about to do a big launch for a client, and I'm setting up a ton of CBO tests because I still don't know exactly how this is going to function come September when this becomes the default. But I think the more we can all discuss this, people on the call, post your questions, post your experiences. But Nehal has done some extensive testing around CBO, and so yeah, buddy, I just wanted to bring you on and get your thoughts. So I know you have slides. You've got you prepared. So let's get started.
Let's do it. So I can share my screen here, and we can go through a little bit of some talking points and then kind of riff from there. So
Hold
as
on,
we
Nehal.
were,
I'm having a little tech issue. Hold on. Okay,
Yeah,
I
no,
almost ended the Facebook Live. Crisis averted. I'm in Sydney right now, and guys, I've had the worst morning. I normally don't even express that, but I woke up at 5 a.m. because I had a training with Train My Traffic Person. I opened Keynote and 600 of my slides were deleted, which was
whoa.
heartbreaking. So anyways, I'm a little scarred from this, but I'm going to go to the Apple store after this and get it figured out. But if I seem a little off, I'm just like stunned in the moment at Keynote's failure or my tech failure, whatever it was.
You're doing a lot better than I would do, so good for you.
Okay, sorry to interrupt, but we're good. The Facebook Live is still going. Hi, Crystal. We're in the same time zone for the first time ever. Meryl said that's so tough. Yeah, at least it's up here. I'm sure we'll be able to find the slides, but yeah,
Okay, yeah,
it happens.
it does. And so hopefully we'll all pray for that. So hopefully get that back. So the way that we were going through, this is specifically for a supplement company that we've been working with, and just some context, just some of the numbers I'll be breaking down. The company that we were working with, they paused ads for about a year and a half. And when they started again, the budget that they gave was $100 a day. And they're like, if you guys can figure out $60,000 a month in ad spend, that would be phenomenal. We can't get CPAs lower than $100. And so their average order value is like $40, and it's a physical product. So for a physical product to have a CPA of $100, even if it's recurring, even if it has high LTVs, even if it has high margins, it's still tough. It's very difficult. So when we came in, we were doing just normal, traditional like campaigns. And then we started seeing some success, and we're about $500 a day. And then CBO kind of came more into the picture. And what we started doing is we were looking at winning campaigns in the like normal campaigns, and in conversion campaigns, and we started moving them over to CBOs. And we were testing different budgets, and a lot of it didn't work because of a couple mistakes that we were making. One was that our budgets were too low. So when we were, for us at least, so our target CPA is $60. And so when we were doing these tests, it was $100, $200. And for some people, it's been
it was $100 at the ad set level?
at the campaign
At
level.
the campaign level. Okay.
Yep.
And so it wasn't giving you enough budget to work with.
At all. And we were putting like 2 to 4 different ad sets. Sometimes we were putting even more than that. And because we're testing, but in order to get the cost per click to the cost to add to cart to the cost per purchase, it didn't add up.
Right.
We just didn't have. And then the way CBO works is this, of course, separating and trying to find the winner. And then as it finds the winner, we're not getting enough data on the right ad set, etc. So that was one mistake that we did, which was too small budgets. And there are people who are doing fine with $200, $300 budgets on the campaign level, but their target CPO is CPA is $20 or $30 or so. So you just get more data for your purchases for 10x essentially. So
really quick, Nehal, it's interesting because you're seeing with CBO or without CBO, budgets are becoming so important. Like someone in the group posted a few days ago that they launched a new campaign with a ton of ad sets, and each ad set was set at $10 a day. Well, their CPA is more like $30 to $40. So with that small of a budget per ad set, I mean, Facebook can't even obtain one purchase a day, right? And so I think that we know how important budgets are, but they're even more important based off of the logistics of how your campaign's set up. And I've seen the same thing, and it's why I only use CBO for scale and not testing, because I've only really gotten it to work when I've got a very hefty budget. Like with Boom, we started a campaign at $10,000 a day with CBO that worked well. But I mean, that's a huge daily budget. So just to reaffirm what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think part of that is if you have a smaller budget, you might start thinking like CBO is not for me, or I gotta wait, or I can't scale my business because I need money in order to do the test, but I can't do the test because I don't have the money, and it's like chicken or the egg, and it can be frustrating. And so the way that we've kind of got, and graduated from traditional campaigns to the CBO is by having the traditional campaigns work. And we found winners there, and then we took them, just exactly like you're saying.
Nice. That's exactly what we're doing. And guys, we didn't talk about this before. Like, he sent me an outline, but we didn't, like, that's cool. We're doing the same thing. So it's what we talked about. There's a video in the members area, guys, about budgets and bidding. If you just search for budget or bidding, you should be able to find it. And I've got some recommendations in there on, okay, if you're testing, use ad set level budgets. Here's how many ad sets you should be using. But then with CBO, it changes a lot. So
it changes as you start running. It changes as you find winners. And I can explain a little bit of some of the tests we're doing and how we're finding some of the winners that we are. And so the first mistake was the budgets were too small. Second is that our audience sizes were too small as well. And so majority of our testing was like 1% lookalike audiences. And theoretically, with traditional, campaigns, you're like, I want the highest quality audiences so I can get the best quality customer, the data in order to get the highest quality customers and then scale from there. And so logically, it makes sense, but in practice, it didn't make sense for CBO. And so we took the other approach, which is everyone is talking about how amazing broad audiences are, completely open, auto placements, dynamic creatives, and let it run. And that didn't work for us either for this account. And so we have a lot of different assumptions that we're going based off of, and we have guesstimates, but at the end of the day, we just have to test it.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we did. So the first thing was like $1,000 budgets that we're doing as test. And so we went straight into like, how do we just go straight into $1,000 budgets? And how do we test this and get numbers quickly? Because the goal again was like, how do we spend $2,000 per day? And we're not just going to spend $1,000 and make it just work in the sense of like, we're not going to spend $1,000. Like the budget is $1,000 doesn't mean we're going to spend $1,000 because we have manual reviews that we're doing, etc. So the goal here was, can we get these $1,000 campaigns to work? And with the $1,000, we had 4 ad sets. And that's what we were testing. We tested 8 ad sets as well. And that didn't work for us. We tested like up to 4 to 8 ads, and 4 happened to work for us. But majority of what we're doing right now is dynamic creative.
Awesome, which I want to learn more about. I don't have a ton of good experience with that. So that's another topic I want us to touch on. But a huge thing with CBO, and I found the same thing. I've tested CBO multiple times with 8 ad sets, 10 ad sets, 12 ad sets. And the issue, is most of you guys know, is that Facebook's now optimizing at the ad set level. And so they're going to pick the 2 or 3, I found ad sets that are working the best or have the largest audience sizes. And so the ball game sort of changes here in terms of campaign structure when you're using CBO, because, my old campaigns that have 50 ad sets in them, right? Those aren't going to work so hot when it comes to campaign budget optimization.
At all. Yeah. And so there's a couple of things like Meryl saying, the chicken and the egg scenario is completely accurate for her, and it's accurate for most people. The reality is I have a finite budget. I don't have a lot to test. I eat with this budget, like I feed my family or whatever the case is. And so whereas other people have budget to blow or budget to invest, and that's the purpose of that budget. Whereas if you're bootstrapping or you're running your business without any, line of credit or excess capital, it becomes a challenge. And so this is what we're talking about on how to do this in a sustainable, more cautious way. But when it works, you have the ability to go from $500 to $5,000 plus pretty quickly. And so I think also Meryl's asking, can you clarify all budget you're talking about per day? So just to make sure it's really clear, there's with CBO, the budget is set at the campaign level, and we're going to talk about some of the minimum maximums that you can set at the ad set level. But the bottom line is that you can set the budget at the campaign level and decide how it's distributed if you want, or let Facebook do all of it. So the budgets that we're talking about here, like what I just outlined, these are the campaign level budgets that we were testing. And so just to go back into this, the $1,000 budgets that we were testing were working really well. And then what we realized is that as soon as we got one of these CBO campaigns to work, with the setup. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, $1,000 budgets is what we tested initially with 4 ad sets, and we had 2 to 4 ads in each ad set, and that's all we were running. And we tested different types of audiences. Broad didn't work for us. 10% primarily were the ones that worked. 10% lookalikes were what worked. But the challenge became is that if the campaign didn't start off right in the beginning of the day, we just lost all of that budget. It wasn't going to recover, and now we don't spend that much money at all. And that was creating some challenges for us because what happened is we want stability in the account. And if there are wins, we want to ride those wins and go as far as we can with those. So when there are wins, we are able to bump a budget from $500 a day to $1,500 to $2,000 per campaign level. Whereas with $1,000, you can scale way quicker. But you also, if that campaign doesn't work, you pause and you're kind of done for the day for that one. So
Totally.
any thoughts on that?
Well, Crystal said, I'm pretty sure I've had too low of a budget on my CBO campaigns as well. So it seems like it's that's resonating with people. And I've seen that too, Nehal. Like the CBO campaigns that have worked really well for me, I have had like a $500 plus a day budget that I'm starting out with. But that's not as scary because I've already tested these audiences and ads, you know, in a campaign with the budget at the ad set level, right? So we're not just coming out and saying, we want to blow a bunch of money. You know, it's like, all right, we know what works and what's, you know, this has worked, but scale is very tough doing this with budgets at the ad set level. So we kind of want that rocket ship that CBO is to allow us to get the volume that we're looking for. So just to clarify for people, and John said he was wondering the same as Meryl, but you just clarified the budgets you're talking about. No, keep going. This is interesting and right in line with what I've seen.
Yeah, for sure. And if people have any like questions, the nerdier the question, the better.
We're all nerds here.
The more technical it is, the more like nuanced it is, the better, just because I'm sure other people have the same question and they're just not asking, or it's good to help create the discussion. So even like yesterday, we just launched a new campaign for a client. On average, they've been spending $8,000 a day. But because the campaign hasn't gone well, majority of it is $1,000 to $1,500 a day, and the majority of it is retargeting because they're so highly trafficked. Now, we have to start from scratch. And when that happens, we have to figure out what the strategy is going to be. And so we didn't start with $1,000 budgets because we're trying to figure out what to test and how to do it. And so the budget we started with that specific client is we have $2,000. So we have just to make sure like this is super, super clear for like ways to start. Okay. Let's move this down. So if you want to start, right, this is what we're talking about. And so with starting, you can have at the campaign level, we're talking about $500. What we can talk about here as well, bidding types, because there are 4 and choosing which one. At the ad set level, we have 4 ad sets. Okay. And what happens is if you want to do a minimum or maximum. Recently, this has been super helpful for us, and we've seen some of our campaigns pick up, which have been because what we're doing with minimums is by default, you have the maximum. We're doing our best to have it add up. Now,
hey, Nehal, can you sort of go over what the minimum and maximums are, like what that means, just before we go into that?
Yeah, so for sure. And I see some good questions coming in here. Awesome. So minimum and maximum. So minimums, what happens if you have 4 ad sets and you have $500 for the campaign, by default, it will start allocating the spend. It won't spend evenly. The whole point of CBO theoretically is to find the winners to allocate the money according to whatever what you're optimizing for. So theoretically, if you're optimizing for conversion with a campaign that you're getting the best conversion CPA target, then it optimizes for that. There's actually a new optimization that came out and that's been rolling out, and that's optimizing for conversion based off of ROAS. And so that's just mind blowing if that works.
Right.
We'll see. It
Yeah, and
sounds
you got to
good,
be
but
set up correctly for that.
for sure. And so there's definitely like opportunity with that one. But what happens is that if you don't set minimums or maximum, if you have four, ad set number two might by default get 40%, 60% of the budget, and you don't control it. And then you're saying, well, the other ones only got out of my $500 budget, only got $50. And so maybe that was a winner, but now I don't know. You know, so what you're able to do is set minimums at the ad set level. And so for us, our budget, our target CPA, and this is just with target CPA, just so this is specific for us. And if you guys have any specific like situations that you want to go through, we can do the same thing for you right now. So our target is $60 CPA. And so for us here with 4 ad sets, what we're doing now and what's working for us is our minimums were $100 to $150 on this. But what has been working is actually this setup for us, okay? And what we're doing, sorry, am I doing my math wrong there? It's 125, there you go. So our max adds up to the campaign level and our minimums are 50. So when our minimums were 100, it wasn't spending right, it was overspending. And by earlier on in the day, we spent a lot more when there aren't that many people online. We just had campaigns that didn't perform as well as they are right now when we have 4 ad sets, $50 minimums, 125. That's our setup at the ad set level. Any questions about that? Is that clear?
So minimum and maximum mean that's the least amount you're going to spend in that ad set for that day, or that's the most amount. So he's using this to sort of combat what we talked about earlier with Facebook sort of selecting 1 or 2 of these ad sets they're going to allocate all of the budget to, which is really how this is built. But this is a way that we can control that a bit better. When I tried this a few weeks ago, it didn't work so well for me. I think it was the certain situation I was in. I was going for leads and I had such a small window, Nahal. Like, I was going for like $1.50 lead. So I was, it's different than with the CPA that you're looking for. You were going for purchases. So my volume was a lot different. And I think that I didn't choose the right minimum and maximum, but that is something I'm about to test in this new launch that we have coming up, because Ralph with Tier 11 and I think Jenny, who's on here, we've even possibly talked about this, but sometimes it can be tough. Sorry, I'm like reading the questions coming in and talking. Sometimes the minimum and maximums can actually throw your campaign off. So I think if you're going to use the minimum and maximum, it needs to be wide open like you've done here, right? Like minimum $50, max 125, right? Not like a super small window that you can't give Facebook a super small window, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and with that, there are different beliefs of like, I just want to put a minimum and let my max be open. Okay, and that's one approach. But the way that we tested a lot of these different nuances for our ad account, and this is the only caveat is like, this is what's working for our ad account. Different ad accounts are working different. Some of them don't work with CBO at all. They're just doing manual bids or auto bids. And so for us, this is the combination that's working right now. And so this has allowed us to go from $100 a day. Right now we're at $5,000, $7,000 per day. And we're doing it relatively consistently. And that was within a quarter, like less than 3 months. And so now we're trying to go from 120K, which is what we spent. So we had a $3,000 a month budget in January. In March, we spent 120K. That's how quickly like it can scale with CBO and everything you've been talking about, Molly.
And so what did this scale look like? Were you just increasing the budget every few days, or like what did that process look like for you to scale this? Because I think also what we're coming up against is, to scale in the olden days, you would increase the budgets at the ad set level, but I was also adding new ad sets in so that you can horizontally scale too. But that doesn't always work with CBOs. So what does scale look like for you guys?
Yeah, so just to finish this, because I know we might confuse people, so $500 with the campaign budget 4 ad sets that we start with, and then at the ad level, dynamic ads. And so we can talk more about like the input here, but this is what we do when we put a bunch of different creatives in there and then let Facebook do its thing.
Cool. And Nehal, really quick, Jordan said, isn't the thing with CBO though, just let the algo do its thing though? Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, but the problem is that when we try to scale this, Facebook is starting to optimize for just a few ad sets, right? And so we're using these minimums and maximums to try to overcome that, so that we can get not just vertical scale in terms of increasing budgets, but to make sure we're also reaching all of those audiences. Like, for example, I had 10 ad sets in a campaign. I was using CBO, and only 3 or 4 of them were getting all of the reach. Well, that was awesome. But the other 7, there was still a lot of meat left on the bone. That's like sort of gross, but it's a good analogy. And so by using these minimums, it allows us to say, yeah, Facebook, we want the algorithm to do the thing, but we also want to make sure that we're still allocating budgets over to these other ad sets, even though Facebook sees them more as like losers, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, and I want to share this with you because Letitia's asking here too of like what to do when this happens, you know, in terms of scaling, because from letting Facebook do its thing, I truly believe that's the future. And for some accounts and for some types of offers, it's working really well. Broad 18 to 65, CBO, dynamic creative, and like let it run. And the only difference that they have in the ad set is male or female, or worldwide and US only, or what countries, you know, however you can break it down, but it's super broad. And I think that works way better when you do have a bunch of other campaigns going that allow pixel data to come in and then help Facebook to do its job. So in terms of scale that you were asking, there's so many different ways to set up this targeting. What people have been talking about is primarily open targeting, right? So no interest, just open, let it run. We found that it didn't work for us. And so what we were trying to do then is
really quick, even if it does work for you, you're still missing out on a lot of scale if you're only using open targeting. So if you guys watch the Watch Me Work videos from last month with Boris, you'll see that Boom's new CBO campaign has, you know, an open targeting ad set, a few ad sets that have interest targeting, and a few ad sets that have lookalike. So even if you're getting open targeting to work, you still need to have ad sets with other types of targeting, or you're going to miss out on a huge portion of the market.
I agree. And there's just so many pockets. And so it just depends which pocket of audience is working for you at that moment. And so if I were to prioritize this in terms of like testing and you're just getting started with CBO, here's what I would probably do based off of some of the results that we're seeing right now. So one is open targeting. Then I would go after interests that are 10 million plus, and then I would go after interests that are 20 million plus, and lookalike audiences that are 10% of your highest intent traffic, and then backwards. So
yeah, that's great.
So if you have customers that are the high, so for example, some of the audiences that are working best for us right now are the lifetime value pixel audiences, right? So we're looking at the people who are spending the most amount of money, exporting them from Klaviyo or Shopify, wherever that you're doing it from. And once you do that, sorry, puppy's going crazy.
He's excited. Do you have to take his toy away?
So with the way that the audiences are working, like what we're seeing, at least from the highest LTV, we're exporting those, and we're not just doing buyers, we're doing buyers who spent the most amount of money, and then doing lookalike audiences based off of those. And we're going after 10%. 10% is the max that Facebook allows natively in the platform, and there's more nerdy ways to get 20%. But I would do that as a starting way. And then what we do, so just starting all the way from the back, highest LTV purchases, then actual purchases. And there's a big difference. Again, things to test here are, is it the purchase pixel or is it the purchase custom audience that you upload? And so those are the exact same data, but is different input, and Facebook will provide different audiences. We've seen it over and over again of pixel lookalike audiences versus like actual raw data lookalike audiences. And work different. So we do that, and then you just work back between initiate checkouts, add to carts, etc. So, but if I were to prioritize, here's what I would prioritize first, which are open targeting, 10 million audience plus interest, 20 million plus interest, and 10% lookalike. So let me know if you guys have any questions about that.
You know, I've been saying like 5 million plus per ad set is like a good, you know, starting point with CBO. But I agree, the ad sets that have worked the best, whether I'm selling info or a physical e-com store, are usually the audiences that are 20, 30 million. And CBO just loves those larger audience sizes. And we do have some questions. Does changing the minimums when you scale cause the campaigns or ad sets to relearn or reset that optimization?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So what happens is that we start off the campaign at, and I can go into some more like detail here of what like the schedule looks like, because this is really important. This is like hands-on media buying.
Your scaling schedule.
Sure, you know, let's that sounds sexy.
I like it.
So in terms of like the actual launch, it's anywhere between 5 o'clock to 6, 7 o'clock latest Eastern for us when we're doing these campaigns in North America. So we're testing that right now, but it's primarily around 5. Once that happens, by 9 a.m., our target again is $60, right? So $60. By 9 a.m., we're hoping for $80 CPA. Okay, and for a lot of people, they would turn like a lot of that off. They might get emotional and they're like, this isn't working, and boom, boom, boom. But we know what the flow of the account is because like we're looking at it so actively, right?
It's gonna take a few days too to get, you know, a true numbers.
Yeah, and so what happens is that from 9 a.m., like even though like the day stuff is important and like letting campaigns spend, and some people are, like let campaigns spend for 3 days and they just, that's the investment of CBO and that's the way they're doing it. It's difficult for us because it's $2,000 and it's just like, cool, we're going to spend $6,000 of our month budget. We don't actually know if that's going to work. And so it is challenging. So $80 is our CPA schedule, like at that 9 a.m. Time period. After that, we're looking at 12 p.m. And so again, I just want to make sure here what we're doing is auto rules are cutting out like obvious losers. Okay, so, and you don't have to have automated rules, like you can, it just helps with any kind of weird glitch of delivery.
Right,
So,
and you're not having to go in and manually day trade if you use rules.
And if you're a business owner, you have a lot of different responsibilities. So what happens with this is this allows you to do deep work, or this allows you to jump on calls, and you're not like refreshing like a crazy person and like going through it. It doesn't allow you to do the rest of your business very well. And so, you know, thankfully, I'm grateful that I have people on my team, you know, that do that more actively. But for me, it allows me to go in at these periods of time too and just check where things are at. But if our target is $60, we're looking at $80 ideally. And so by 12 p.m., we know, and just so there's some manual losers here as well that we're turning off. The important thing here is when.
And sorry, those are ad sets you're turning off or ads that you're turning off? Because I found that when I turn an ad set off with CBO, because of the breakdown effect, it seems to affect the rest of the campaign. Do you get what I mean? And so that's a struggle for me because something's not working. I want to turn it off, but when it does, it seems to actually affect the other ad sets. So, you know, again, guys, we're all figuring this out together. It's like, what the hell do we do about that?
So what we do about that is we turn it off and then we adjust maxes.
Okay, so that's the way you overcome that. I'm taking notes on this.
Yeah, so for example, here, like this is the thing, there's so much that I could probably learn from nuances that you're doing, Molly, and there's hopefully things that I can share with you that you can test and see if it works on your account. And so what happens is like here, right? So I just want to make sure this is like not kind of pie in the sky. This is like super tactical of like what to actually do, which is in the start. So we might have 4 ad sets. When I'm going through losers, at that point, we might have 2 ad sets now. And so the min stays the same, but if it's a $500 budget, so let me just make sure. So on a $500 budget, now this becomes 250. And so the campaigns, as far as I understand, the delivery is still fine. The actual, it takes about 30 minutes for the budgets to increase, usually, and sometimes even quicker, but we do give that a little bit of time. And for us, this is what's working because now there's only 2 ad sets, and we've tested when we do max open, so there's no maxes, only minimums, and we've tested without minimums and maximums. For whatever reason, on our accounts, this is what's working. As soon as we are, we haven't talked about increase or decrease of budgets, but if we keep the same budget, turn off ad sets, we turn off 2 of them, we only have 2 active, we just do the total campaign budget divided by number of active ad sets, that's all.
Okay, interesting, great.
Yeah, so that is that. So rules don't upset the algorithm. This is a very important question because what happens is how do we scale on this, right? So I came prepared, Molly. I'm ready.
You're always prepared. I love talking to you about this stuff. It's like if we're gonna solve this CBO problem, it's gonna be with Nehal. And guys, if this is confusing, it should be. Like this isn't a presentation where it's like we know exactly how to do this, right? Like this is not a like here's the step by step to do this. Like this is team traffic. We're figuring this out with you. So if you're confused, like both of us are confused too. I mean, not confused, but like this is evolving every day. So this is just like an open conversation that we want to have. I think it's a good way to describe this.
Yeah, and so Molly, let me share this with you in the chat. People are asking, can I get this document so they can follow along?
Great. And then I'll put that in a Facebook Live right now.
Yeah. So I'm just going to make sure people can get that. Let me just remove any of these extra things. Cool. I will just remove that. All right. Cool.
And then a few questions, if you don't mind. Meryl said, would you have to have high budgets for 10% lookalike audience, I assume? And then, well, we'll go ahead and answer that. We got a lot of questions coming in.
First of all, like, good for you, Kenny, for asking, because other people, I'm sure, were thinking about the document as well. There's already a bunch of people in here. Okay, so in terms of, what was the question again?
Let's answer 3 questions and then go back, because I think we're trying to keep up with the questions, guys, but then we're getting a little off track, which is fine. But so the rules don't upset the algorithm. Let's go back to that one from Crystal.
Yeah, so we have not been using rules for a lot of what we're doing, and we've been doing our best to do manual. It's not ideal. We just set them up recently for lenient rules for worst case situations, okay? And so let me just put these, because there's a lot of nuance you can go into, and I can see if I can find like the exact ones. But basically, one of the things that we had was we analyzed it, and so it was $24 spend without a click. Without one click, like turn that off. And so the reason we have that is because it was like, that's too much for us. Usually, because we were watching it. It's not just like, oh, $24 sounds like good, whatever. It just happens to be like for our ad account, we just set that number. Then with $7 clicks, and I think it was like $35, and I can get these for you guys after if you guys like, but it was $35 add to carts. For us, that's our target. And so if it's more than that, because if it's $7 clicks, like we don't want that, our max is purchase for 70. It does catch up. Again, if you can spend money, and the only difference here was if there are less than 3 add to carts. Because we know that if there's more, it's going to convert, because for this specific client, it's super high. Add to cart to purchase rate is 70%. For most of our clients, it's 20 to 30.
Yeah. So
you know?
these are, not every business needs to use these rules, guys, but Nahal's just saying like, here's for this one client, some rules we figured out.
These are super like funnel specific and CPA specific, and then eventually what works is account specific. And so that's why I don't know if there's anyone who can say this is what's going to work for CBO across accounts. It just doesn't exist right now.
Yeah. So the rules, they don't affect the algorithm, Crystal, from my knowledge. Like, it's the benefit of the rules are that it's set up for Facebook to sort of automate these actions so that Nehal can be here on this call and not in the ad account. But they don't seem to reset the algorithm. Now, it does depend on the action though, right? Because most of the rules you're using are, if this happens, turn this off. Right. And so, that could affect the CBO campaign in terms of the algorithm because of the breakdown effect that we talked about earlier. So in essence, it could, I guess, but it's really not like hurting the campaign from my perspective.
Yeah, and especially if you're starting out, I wouldn't recommend rules, especially if it's lower budgets, because you can watch it when it gets complicated. So, for example, with the $500 campaigns, we have one of our clients has 14 campaigns with 4 ad sets in each one, so that works out to 64 ad sets, and so it's just a lot,
Yeah.
it's not.
Totally. You need help managing that. And
Yeah.
Jenny, who is amazing, a great friend, she said, I was saying I test a lot using CBO, but like Nehal, I start super restricted. So it's more like ad set budgets with minimum budgets. I use the daily spend as the max. Couldn't agree more, Jenny. And I think that's the answer to, okay, so when we switch over to CBO in September, how are we going to test? Well, we're going to use the minimums and the maximums to do the testing that we now do at the ad set level is what I think. And then Meryl said, so 2 more quick questions and we'll keep going. This is awesome, by the way. I love this stuff. This is so nerdy. Would you have to have high budgets for 10% lookalike audiences, I assume?
Yeah, so for us, we don't. We have the same $500. And so the way to look at this is whatever your CPA is, you can multiply that by 10 and look at that as your campaign budgets.
That's great.
That's one way to do it. And so let me just put that. So 10x CPA. The challenge becomes, one of the new accounts that we started working on, their CPA target is $100. And that is just 100% ROAS. And so like with $100 CPA. And so when things work, we have $30, $40 CPAs on this brand new account that we're working on, but not all of them are going to be like a hit, and not everything is going to work all the time. And so we have our worst case like targets. And then of course, if things work, then we scale and spend more money. But that might be one way to look at it if you have like a $20, $30 CPA, you can start with $300 at the campaign level.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Ginny says, yeah, for example, a 3,000 campaign budget starting with 9 ad sets, all minimum $300 a day ad spend. So she's ensuring that even though we're using CBO, we're still getting that allocation across the board there. And she said, as I kill losers, I give Facebook more freedom to determine budget. So you guys are saying the same thing. That's awesome. And BJ said, are the interests being grouped within an ad set to make the sizes, and are the sizes matched within the campaign? Or if one interest is 10 million, then do you do another ad set with another interest? And then what about overlap? So BJ, I wouldn't worry much about overlap with CBO. I'm not sure what you mean about matched within the campaign, but normally what I'm doing with interest when I go to CBO, say that I'm testing the budget at the ad set level, say I've got 10 ad sets, right? And they're maybe all interest targeting. And let's say the audience sizes are between like 2 and 5 million. Some of them have a bunch of interest groups. Some of them might just be one interest, if it's a larger one. So after that fatigues and I'm ready to set up a new campaign with CBO, I'll just squish those 10 ad sets basically down to 3 or 4 that are interest-based that have much higher, much larger audience sizes, if that makes sense. So I think that answers your question. But with interest, like to increase that audience size, you just need to squish them together and not spread them out across as many ad sets as you would if your budgets were at the ad set level.
I think, BJ, you're cheating. You can't ask that many questions in one comment.
We love you, BJ. All right. So go ahead.
Just on that. So it's a very important question, because the way that we realize we're having some challenges, because we're like, how do we isolate variables here? Because everything is a mix. We can't figure out what's working or what's not. How do we separate stuff? And so what we do is we'll go just, for example, if we were to prioritize open targeting, we separate those out into 4 different types of open targeting. If we want to do just gender, or if we want to do country-based, etc. But 10 million person interest, that becomes the name of the campaign. And the ad sets inside of those, all 4 are 10 million person interests. So that way, as we're going deeper, we find what's winning. We're trying to actively replace those interests with new, like losing interest with new test interests. So we can see the next test of 10 million interests winning. And ideally, what started happening for us, that 10% lookalike audiences started winning for us. 20 million person audience interest started working for us. So then we're going deeper of how do we find more 20 million person interest? And is our hypothesis true that 20 million person interest work for this account? And so that way you can separate your testing. Instead, it's like, well, I have 4 random ideas for a lookalike audience and interest of 5 million, 10 million, 20 million. Let me put them in and let's see what happens. Instead, we put them at the campaign level, and then we create, for example, a CBO campaign, like CBO number 1, and that is open. CBO number 2, 10 million person. We find that that works. We find more audiences, so we have 4 active. And if we keep seeing winning audiences work, we find more 10 million person audiences with 4 ad sets per campaign. That's the structure that's working for us. So we're limiting it to 4.
Awesome. And you mean 4 ad sets per campaign?
Yes,
and
with
that's
interest, right? So it's one interest. Yep. We're not combining a bunch of them.
Okay. Well, we always have disagreed about that, and we'll just agree to disagree.
This is the thing. So I don't disagree with anything here. And this is all the things that are working for us. And whenever things work, and whenever we get arrogant about what we think is working, we get our butts kicked.
Totally.
And so I have seen it. I haven't got a chance to see the combination of different interests in one ad set and see if it works. So
I'm just giving you shit. But BJ, Boris and I had a really good discussion about this. I think it's pretty good. We went in depth about sort of what you're asking about in the Watch Me Work videos, because one of the issues that we had, we weren't using minimums and maximums, and we had 11 ad sets. And so a big portion of those ad sets, a lot of them interest-based, weren't getting the juice that we needed. So Boris and I are like, okay, do we do minimums? Do we do maximums? Do we now scale by launching multiple CBO campaigns, which I do think is going to be the future of scaling, where we used to add new ad sets. Now we create new campaigns. But I think that's still to be determined. So, all right, we'll let you keep going. This is awesome. And thank you again.
Yeah, for sure. So, and BJ's asking, like, if I should have these like 2 million person audiences versus 20 million person audiences in the same campaign or separate campaigns. You can theoretically like have them in the same campaign. There's not anything, like there isn't anything wrong with that. We just prefer it just to make our decision making a lot simpler. Because what happens is when you're testing a bunch, 1 month later, you have all of these tests, but it's hard to know which one's working. And so with a campaign like naming convention of saying, these are my 20 million person audiences and these are my 2 million, statistically after like 10 tests in each one or whatever, depending on how much you're spending, 20 million worked. And so let's just go deeper in that. And then you can come back to 2 million as you need to. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome.
Jordan's asking, with a historical CPA, one of our brands at $50, if we want to test smaller audiences because we burnt some big budgets, you tested out conversion events, even if you have a goal for sales. So we optimize sometimes for add to carts. We try not to do that unless it's a clear winner or we have a clear problem where we just can't get CPMs down, we can't get CPCs down, or we can't get our cost per add to carts down enough. So we've had situations like that. The only way that we've fixed that, or what we've tested that, is with the intention of optimizing for add to cart. Our add to carts become like 30%, like anywhere between 70% to 50% of our normal add to carts. So we get so many more that retargeting picks them up. Or our CPAs are a little bit more expensive, but the retargeting, like net ROAS, makes it worth it.
Well, and
And
so many more, there's a higher volume of people further down the funnel, right? So if you look at it purely from the CPA standpoint, you might say, well, using purchase, that is going to get me the lowest CPA. But then if you maybe try add to cart, you say, oh, well, the CPA is $5 more, but I have 40% more people a step further in my funnel. So what does that mean for my retargeting campaigns?
yeah, and so what we look at is like ROAS at the cold level or prospecting, whatever you want to call it, and then ROAS for retargeting, what our targets are for those, and then we look at net ROAS in terms of account across the account. So, for example, with one of the accounts, the target is 2x on Facebook, because in reality it's 2.5 to 2.8, but on Facebook it's 2. On cold, our target is 1 to 1.5. One at the very low level, 1.5, and then we expect all of the retargeting to pick up the net ROAS, because on retargeting it's going to be 2.5, 3 plus. And so just the
Awesome.
blended ROAS makes up for it. So
Cool. Meryl said, yeah, you have to be so nimble and open-minded. So true. I mean, this stuff is, like I said, we're figuring this out together. So there is no even best practice, I think, yet for this, and those change too. But Jenny said, bingo, Molly, scale with additional campaigns with CBO. I think that's what works the best, because sometimes adding a new ad set to an existing campaign not only rocks the boat, but sinks the whole ship. Totally. That's definitely what I think we're all coming up against. Meryl said, so what are you optimizing for then, Nehal?
yeah, just to make sure like that's clear. So we're optimizing for conversion. We're optimizing for purchases, and everything else is like in addition to that. So I think that's just to make sure that's not confusing. What Jordan was just asking is like, what happens if you've already blew a bunch of the ad spend? What else could you test for? So that's one of the solutions, but we prefer going to the purchase. So
Love it. Okay, you want to keep going through your scaling schedule? I love how active this call is. Like, we are truly masterminding here. I'm in Australia, you're in Colombia. We're like, how cool is it that we get to do this?
I know, this is awesome. So just to make sure, again, like a lot of our campaigns, especially ad sets that were turned off that are like in the testing phase or now becoming losers, are still being tested at that point, and they're getting launched around the 5 to 7 a.m. Eastern. Once that happens, we're letting stuff run, and hopefully we're getting a couple sales. Like in the beginning stages, we have $100 CPAs, 150, and we do our best not to freak out, because it's very easy to. And so by 9 a.m., by 9 a.m., our target is $80 CPA. Hopefully, auto like rules or cutting stuff off, or manual reviews or just cutting stuff off. So those are just check-in points, right?
Yep.
If we turn anything off, we just want to like increase the maxes. That's the way that we're doing it. Now, at that point, this is very important for us, because usually at this time by 9 a.m., we're getting a little bit of activity. So we're getting $50 to $70 spends on campaign levels. By 12 p.m., this is where we're expecting like $70 CPAs. Okay, and again, our target is 60. And so we're expecting $70 net CPA on the account.
And something really quick too, sorry to cut you off. We've got to realize with CBO that we are playing a volume game and a speed game here. So traditionally, especially when we're just getting started and we're using smaller budgets, you're not going to get data back in hours like you're seeing here, right? But with CBO, not only because of the way it functions, like the rocket ship we talked about earlier, but also the big budgets that you're using, right? Those combined are a huge reason that allows Nehal to start to make these decisions much sooner than we traditionally would with a campaign. So Kenny asked a question about that, and I just wanted to make sure, what typically do you allow day-wise to determine if it is a loser or not? Well, with ad set at the budget level, with smaller budgets, you normally need a few days because Facebook just hasn't had enough money or time to play with. But with CBO, he said, I've had ads where I let it run in the beginning and it was high conversions, but after 4 or 5 days, it settled down and ended up getting much better, just seeing what determines a loser or not. So, I mean, what determines a loser depends on your goal, your CPA goal or your lead goal, whatever that metric is. But some of you, if you're, starting out with $10 a day ads or budget at the ad set level, you can't make a decision this quickly. So I just wanted to add some context to that.
Yeah, the first time I heard of these methods, I was like, this is so active and it feels like day trading. And I'm like, this feels like gambling. Like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm working too hard. And then I realized like that it's actually, if you set check-in points, you can still have the same effects. And the check-in points are like 5-10 minutes max. And then everything else, like refreshing and just looking at numbers because they're fun, like that's fun. But if you want to make decisions, these are some of the rhythms that we've come up with, so that our team, especially if you have a media buyer on your team, you have to systemize this in some way. And they're going to say like, well, I looked at it like 2 hours ago, but hold on a second, did you look at it at these increments? And then you can check in with them.
Love that. And BJ said, love the specifics here. Great content. People are loving this. So I'm going to be more quiet and let you do your thing.
It's all good. So this is like more of the sexy part now. So in the beginning, 9 a.m., you're just trying to figure life out and like, are things working? By 12 p.m., you're getting closer to your goal because again, these are ad sets. These are, so campaigns are just testing and you're setting the environment. Ad sets are where you're testing the targeting. And then the ad is you're taking your proven campaigns and you're proven ads and you're putting those and just running. So ideally you're already optimizing and, increasing the probability of the ad sets working and the ads working because you already have winners. Like you said, these are with this is a scaling phase, not a testing phase, And so you're on mute, I think.
and that is why all of this is subjective, guys. This is what he's doing because they're scaling. They already know that these ads worked. They already know that these audiences, some way resonated. We're in the scale phase. And so, BJ said, I'm like, Kenny, my challenge is what Kenny said is that to allow the ad set to run 5 days to see if it works, my budgets then aren't high enough to optimize for conversions.
Yeah, and so we don't do that. And I think the ones that are like letting budgets run, like in terms of like that strategy, it can work. It's just a longer term bet. And so you just have to decide which bets you want to invest in, right? So the easiest and like the highest, more probable bet right now has been auto bidding, like traditional campaigns. This now, when you found winners, you're trying to figure out and bet your money to figure out like the risk and the reward here is scale. And then the bets are based off of how much of your risk tolerance is, and then the reward can be higher as well. And this is the same thing that we were talking about, is the risk and reward with $500 budgets where you're getting stability with the ability to scale, versus you're starting at 1,000. If something hits, you really get that thing to hit, and you can be just at one campaign, be at 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, not including any of your other campaigns. And so it just depends on your risk tolerance. And if this is not a competition, this is just with your specific account, it's just with your business. I hope as we're talking about this and you're spending $100, $200, like you're not like envious or jealous, like use this and figure out how to use this in your own business with whatever budgets you have. Because the same way we're spending, on some accounts, $5,000, $7,000 a day, there's other people spending $50,000, $100,000 a day. And so we're working in the environments that we're at. And if these numbers sound big, there's always someone who's spending more. So please don't take it too personal if you are. So, okay, to keep going, I'm trying, Molly, I'm trying. And so—
No, I love it. This is awesome. I keep interrupting you. So
it's your fault. So, so in the beginning, you're just trying to figure out if you're actually getting sales, right? So you're at $80 CPA. Then from here, we're hopefully getting closer. Again, in good days, once you start seeing these and you're doing these checks, these are like a lot of gut in the beginning. You're just trying to like figure out what's working and what kind of numbers you see. If that doesn't feel natural to you, you can start writing stuff down if that's appropriate. But for me, I just look at it and I'm in the account so frequently that I just feel it. And so as weird as that might sound. And so $80 CPA by 9 a.m. If we are at $60 CPA by 9 a.m., I know we're going to have a phenomenal day.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So last week, end of Q1 was really bad for one of our accounts, and it kept getting worse. And then yesterday we woke up and it was $54 by 9 a.m. and we ended up spending $7,000. But when things aren't working, we're spending $2,000, maybe $3,000. But when things are working, we have the ability to spend $5,000 more, just because it's working. And so, cool, $80 CPA. Now by 12 p.m., it's at 70. Again, this is like worst case. Hopefully, we're around this area, 70. Now, how do you make these decisions? So at the campaign level for us, when we're having $500 budgets, so I want to make sure this is super clear. So $500 budgets, we want to make sure we're not spending crazy amounts of money or bumping it without like enough spend. So we tried this. When we spent just $30 or $50 and we got a sale or two, we got super excited. We're like, let's double budgets or let's bump it to $250 or whatever, right? And it's like, who cares? Even, the logic is like, even if numbers go down, it'll still be good enough. But what happens is that the delivery doesn't work the same. It doesn't, if you do scale too hard sometimes, it does happen like that. So what the number that we figured out for this specific account is if we're around $150 in spend and our CPA is $40 or $50, between 40 to 50, again, our target is 60, we bump by 250. So that's by 50%.
Perfect.
Okay. And when we do that, we also bump ad sets, right? So ad sets minimums and ad set maxes, right? So that's what we want to do here as well. So for example, if it goes 750, then we just look at how many ad sets there are active and bump those at the same time. And all we're doing is we don't want to create any issues between disparities of what's going on at the campaign level and budgets and ad sets. So for us, we tested when the campaign and the ad set level budgets do add up versus they don't. And for this specific account, it works when we have them add up. Okay, right. So we actively do that.
And you know what I found too, and this might be because I've mainly used CBO in like launch mode, right? And so I'm needing to acquire a bunch of people in like 2 weeks. So this isn't an evergreen campaign. So I need to be more aggressive. I normally tell people, if you have an evergreen campaign, increase the budget 50% every 3 to 5 days, depending on what you're doing. But what I have found with CBO is that I can scale quicker. Like I was increasing by 50%, sometimes 100% every day. Now, again, part of that was because I was in launch mode. So I needed to spend that money no matter what, but it didn't cause the rise in my cost per acquisition that I used to see when we had budgets at the ad set level and we were trying to scale. Does that make sense to you? And so that makes me happy because I feel like that is a huge benefit of CBO is that if it's working, Facebook can digest that really, crazy increase in budget more frequently than it's ever been able to before. And that's a theory, but I think that's going to be huge for us.
Yeah, it does work like that. And so what happens for us is like our number that we're looking at by 12 p.m. Now look at how much delivery has happened, right? So it's just until 12. And so if the ads have been running all night or if they've been running from 7 a.m. Eastern to 12 p.m., at that point, we're looking at it. And if it's at $150 spend, right? So if it's at $150 spend, what we're looking at, our target is $60 CPA. If we're between 40 and 50, we just bump it up a little bit, 250. Yep. For us, that's a little bit, which is 50%. If it's, again, our target's 60 and it's below 40, we bump it up and we double it. So it's 5, right? And so then what we're trying to do is trying to figure out which are the assets that are working and then go deeper with those. And then we usually find a loser or that whole campaign is a winner and multiple assets are winning, right? And so we have that. And so now, I think here, Meryl, was it Meryl? Meryl was saying, like, I didn't realize that it was so fast. I'm glad you're spelling this out hour by hour. So that it can be this fast and we do bump budget. So what you were saying, Molly, of like bumping over time, and I think that's what we were doing a lot of that too. With here, we look at something where we're looking at campaign like win ratio. So the way we look at this is how many of them like did we launch oops, depending on how you want to position it here, but it's like launch to win ratio. So to give you an idea, like we launch 14 of them and then 7 of them are successful or 8 of them are successful. And from those, we are able to scale 3 of them or 4 of them. And so what happened today, for example, for one of our accounts, we launched 14. 2 of them were losers by 12 p.m. already. And so that's cool. Our budget for the day was $7,000. By default, because we already found 2 losers, we're not going to spend that $1,000. We only spent like 200 between those 2, you know? And I think the question here was, you know, in theory, if you weren't getting 2 purchases in 2 to 3 hours, you could know what the campaign is going to do. And yes, you can, because you keep seeing these rotations and you keep seeing these rhythms, and you can kind of feel the account of which campaigns are going to hit and which ones aren't. And you can see sometimes of when campaigns recover. Because if you're making decisions at 7 a.m., usually it's too early, depending on the time zones. Unless you're on Pacific and your market's still awake. And so there are, you know, you have to adjust this for your account, and just by looking at it. These are what I'm telling you is based off of after watching these for a couple months now and making decisions and seeing how it reacts. I'm able to see it, but you guys can piggyback off this, right? So at 12 p.m. for scaling, we look at these budgets, and if it's a little bit successful, so you can see it's like about 20% under our CPA target, we bump a little bit by 50%. If it's under by that's about, you know, over 30%. So we're at 70% of our CPA target, we double ad spend. And we're doing a little bit more like sweeping. So we, you know, you're turning off any losers manually, if they're not already turned off automatically, okay? So that's that. Next so after this, it usually gets a lot simpler. And so what happens here is 4 p.m. when we check in, we already know what the clear winners are. We already know what the clear losers are. For this specific account that we're talking about, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. is a complete lull. There isn't that much activity going on. Sometimes it actually, our CPA goes up during this time. And so look at the lulls in your account. And what I would look at is watch spending and watch your number of purchases that are coming in. So we see as soon as 12 or 1 p.m. hits, everything slows down. And so we know that. So we account for that, because instead of, again, like being emotional and freaking out of like, what happened to my CPA? What's going on? I'm going to lose. It's going to be a bad day. We just know the rhythms. Right. So
and add context, like your audience might be at work, right? And then they come back in the evening and purchase. So, you know, you got to add, layer on context of what your market's doing at this time of day.
Yeah. And that's just something to consider as you spend more money and look at your audience. And the challenge becomes like, what do I want it to work like versus what the truth is and the reality of the account is. It doesn't matter how you want it to work, you know, and most people expect the day to go like this, but it actually goes like up and down a lot. And you just have to make decisions on when to make decisions. And so that's what we're doing right now. And so 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 4 p.m., 7 p.m. And so 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., what we're doing here is by 4 p.m., now things are about to pick up again, okay? And so we're watching for opportunities to scale further. Usually we're just bumping some ad sets or bumping campaigns. And it's a little bit of cleaning up and sweeping, but for the most part, it's just scaling a little bit further. Find 1 or 2 campaigns that we can push a little bit further. The campaigns that were at 750 or 1,000, we move them to 1,000 to 1,500 as they're working. And then 7 p.m. usually is like when it gets a little bit hot too, and it slows down around 10. And what happens is that, so again, you don't have to do these check-ins, but this is like what we like to do. And you can do this a lot slower. You can slow down budgets later on in the night if you like. It just comes down to how active you want to be. So for us, we want to be super active, and we want to like push as much as we can each day. And so those are our check-in times. So there's not anything unique.
So helpful. Yeah,
there's not really any unique things that happen here, because you're not going to scale a campaign at 10 p.m. Like there's not that much time left. And usually it doesn't lead to high quality sales or low CPAs. And usually by 7 p.m. we're pushing a little bit. We still have some time, but not that much. And so most of our scaling happens by 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. a little bit by 7. And that's it.
Fantastic. BJ said, I've been spending $500 to $1,000 per day to hit conversions, but CPA has been getting worse after I hit the 50 conversion mark, per week, usually within 3 days, opposite of what I thought was supposed to happen. So I haven't left it on for 5 days thinking it wouldn't come back down.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it sounds great in theory. It doesn't end up working. Like, again, there's a lot of, like, everyone from Facebook will tell you that, a lot of the messaging and training around this is like get 50 conversions, or depending on the ROAS thing that's coming out, it's like 25 conversions per week. But we haven't seen anything major or life-changing that happens as soon as this magical 50 number is hit.
Well, and especially like I have noticed with budgets at the ad set level, if you don't hit 50 conversions a week, it will, it usually dies because Facebook doesn't have enough data to go find more of these conversions. But what's interesting, I set up a CBO campaign 2 months ago and optimizing for purchases. Now, we only have over 2 months, like 24 conversions, right? Way less than we're supposed to have per week. And it's working great. I haven't tried to scale it. It's a retargeting campaign for team traffic, so the cost per acquisition is over $100. I mean, this is a higher ticket offer. So I'm wondering if when using CBO, the 50 conversion a week issue, or this thing that we've seen happen in terms of things die if they don't get 50 conversions a week. I'm wondering if CBO sort of overcomes that. I don't think we necessarily know, but that is just something I'm going to post that campaign in the group this week, guys, because I want you guys to see it. I've been like ready for it to die. I'm like, when's it going to quit working? And it keeps getting better. So I think that information is important for less that 50 is a magic number. There's nothing magical that happens at 50. 50 is just a benchmark that Facebook knows based off of our machine learning, which I said in a session where Mike Rhodes taught artificial intelligence about Google yesterday. I recorded it. I'm going to upload it for you guys. That's a topic for another day, but it shows you, Facebook's getting smarter every day. So the 50 conversion number, just to go back, that might be a benchmark where they've seen on average, if you can get 50 conversions a week, that's about how much data our system needs to really do our best job. But I think that's becoming outdated with CBO and with the machine, right? The artificial intelligence getting smarter. I didn't know this, but 80% of the people who are employed to build artificial intelligence work at Google and work at Facebook. And so we sort of lose sight of the fact that they are building this intelligence to start to predict who is going to buy our stuff, right? Or who is most likely to take that action. And the smarter they get, I think the least amount of data that they're going to need, because you also have to remember that during this time, they're collecting every day, they have more information about Nehal and Molly as consumers, right? So it's not just about what do people look like that are taking this conversion action. They're also collecting data and have more data to say, oh, based off of the last 10 years you've been on Facebook, Molly is most likely to buy this dog jacket for Larry because, her behavior, the data is telling us that. So that was kind of a complicated explanation, but BJ, I think that is becoming a tad bit outdated, the 50 conversion a week thing, especially when using CBO.
Yeah, and so he's saying that he's spending like $500 to $1,000 per day to hit conversion numbers, but I think there are still ways to do that while making sure you're hitting your day-to-day like CPA numbers. It doesn't have to be like an all-in investment just to like get to the other side. So
totally. This is amazing. I love chatting with you. So what do you want to talk about the dynamic creatives, or what do you want to what are you thinking? Do you have to run? We're at 75 minutes now. I appreciate your time, but just let us know what you want to do.
Today's actually the first time I've ever done a 24-hour fast, so I'm gonna go and like feast after this. So super
as you should. Yeah, and we could
Yeah.
also do another training just about dynamic creatives. If it would be easier to split this into two
Oh,
conversations, it might be a lot to digest right now. You're
yeah.
not digesting anything, but oh, bad joke.
I like a good pun. So um, with the only thing I would say about dynamic creative, because there is like a lot of nuance to it. I don't know if it's as complex as CBO and all the stuff that like we're talking about. The only thing I would say about dynamic is that for whatever reason, the same ads that you're testing for your campaigns and you found that are winning elements. So you might have found winning media like graphics and videos, or you might have found winning text descriptions or headlines. What we're doing is taking the same, all those winning assets and putting them in a dynamic creative. And for some reason, they're working better than the campaigns with post IDs and the ones with social proof. And there's like different theories on why that might be. I don't know if it's just because Facebook has more to test within that same ad set and it's CBO. So it's, delivering in a specific way, like in a more broad way. But for us, when we were doing CBO with post IDs versus CBO and dynamic, the dynamic has been winning for some reason.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
that's almost all that we're doing right now. And then we're now pulling those winning permalinks, like the actual post IDs, from those dynamic ads and seeing if we can get those to work even better, because that's what has worked. And the winner has been from dynamic.
And this is
So
something I want to test to, like, I'm going to test again in this launch because I tested this in January. And for me, the post IDs absolutely crushed it. But those post IDs already had a metric shit ton of social proof, right? And so it just came out of the gate with just, it was like the campaign just, I've never seen something like that before. So I'm wondering too, if it has to do, if you're using existing post IDs or if you're using like fresh ads, right? I guess would be a good way to put it, versus these dynamic creatives. I think that variable is huge. Does that make sense?
yeah, so that's something that we're trying to figure out if that's true for our accounts and if it's working. Because theoretically, again, it's like, okay, you have thousands of comments, or you have proven high, click-through rates, crazy good relevance score, all this like social proof with like not only comments from people, but the community managers responding and increases the click to conversion rate, click to sale conversion rates. All of these things theoretically that should be better, but sometimes our new dynamic creatives with the same winning ads work better. And
Yeah. And I
yeah,
think a reason for that could be that when we're only using old post IDs, we really come up against ad fatigue, not in the sense of like, I'm seeing the same ad all the time, but Facebook can only show the same ad to the same person. I think it's 2 times a day, right? 2 to 3 times. I can't remember the exact metric. So I think what's happening here, and where you're like so smart with this, is that for scale, yes, coming out with post IDs that have social proof, like that can't be argued because that's 2/3 of the auction, right? Like if you are winning on 2/3 of what factors into the auction based off of how the algorithm works, I mean, you can't lose in that scenario. But eventually, as you scale that CBO campaign, Facebook can't show those same 2 ads that you're using to the same people over and over again. So I think these dynamic creatives are allowing like freshness, I guess would be the word. And this is just me theorizing, but you have inspired me to test this, especially for scale, because I think when you're initially scaling those post IDs with existing social proof, you need that to sort of get out of the gate. But then I guess when you reach the next level of scale, is a good way to put it, then you need to like add some new freshness in. So what this looks like, I'm not sure.
yeah,
But just sort of riffing on this with you.
yeah. And with these, with these tests that we have, what we're seeing is that it doesn't really matter so much on the audiences as much, because it's just a matter of like which audience convert. And so you just have to kind of throw them in, see which ones stick, and then it's a competition to, can you beat your own creative? Because
Totally.
after, yeah, we're just trying to do a bunch of volume of creative, and it's not complex creative. What I mean by that is like, if we have an image, what we're doing is we're animating the background, or we're changing a color, or we're trying to figure out small variations that we can do. So we have one ad, but that becomes 4 variations, and we don't know like what's going to work. And so we let Facebook figure that out. And
Yeah.
so the more we think of like, oh, that color looks great, or like that thing is like the winning ad. Again, whenever we get too confident or too arrogant, it's like, nope, that's not going to work. So we give a bunch of data to Facebook. Facebook figures it out for us.
Yeah, and Jenny said dynamic creatives is just a crap load of post IDs, by the way, not truly dynamic like DPAs. That's a great point, and something for everybody to understand, because I think when we hear the word dynamic in regards to Facebook, we think it's like literally dynamic in terms of the action the consumer is taking or not taking. So that's a great point, Jenny. And she said, I think Facebook incentivizes new products they want people to use. So true. I think they really want people to use it. So CPMs are lower when using dynamic creatives. Also hugely likely too, and something that might change over the coming months.
Yeah, I wonder, and that's such an important point, because there's not that much dynamic nature to the dynamic ads. The only dynamic part of it is dynamic like delivery of the combination, but the actual ads are pretty fixed. So thank you for that point.
Okay. Any other last thoughts, Nehal? I know you want food. That's really important. Props to you for doing a fast. I think if you're willing, we should do this again next month after I've run these tests and you've continued running your agency. I mean, if you're willing, like checking back in on this is important, because like I said, this isn't like here are the best practices. I mean, you laid out an awesome schedule and sort of how you're doing things, but there's still a lot that we're all figuring out. So getting you back here to check in and continue the conversation would be fun.
Yeah, for sure. And none of this like existed for us like 2 months ago. And so this is the exciting part where like we're making it up as we go, and based off of what's working, we're adjusting it. So this is not like, this is like a theoretical thing. Try this, figure it out, good luck. It's like, these are active accounts that are running evergreen campaigns, right? Because with what you're saying is like the way you do a launch CPO versus evergreen campaigns or even longer term promotions, it's a little bit different. And so, depending on your target CPAs, depending on how you're looking at growth, your risk tolerances, all of that kind of stuff is different. And so for us, one of the accounts, we're at 120, we're trying to get, to 150, 200 by the end of the quarter in terms of monthly spend. So we'll see how that goes. And we have another one that we're doing 150 in 120, 150 in spend. We're trying to get to 300. And I don't know if like we're going to be able to do that. We have to see what the market bears. And so that's a combination of the market, but also like our inputs as the media buyers, as strategists. And so we're going to find out. I'd love to update you on that. The only thing I would say about like, implementing this, there's a lot of moving parts. If you guys want to like listen to this again and go through it, of course, if there's any way like I can help, like tag me in the comments of this live, and I'll give feedback. I'm sure Molly will have input too. The only thing I would say is like, figure out what the starting point is to this campaign for your specific account and your business. And so if like, if you have a 30, like our target CPA is $60. And so we just happen to do $500. It could be 600, following this, but we just put 500 for whatever your target is. It doesn't have to be $500. It could be 250, or if it's a $30 CPA, $300. And you're just doing 4 ad sets or less, and you just see what's working for you. If you have winning ad set, like winning ads already, look at those moving like individual variables, see if you can extract those of what my winning images or videos are, what are my winning descriptions, and then pull them in and then start testing based off of some of these priorities.
Heck yes. I love that. Meryl said this was so fantastic, really got me inspired, and I feel a lot better about my campaigns moving forward. Excited to start trying this out. Thank you, Nehal. So that's great. Teresa said, so when you say you have 2 to 4 ads per ad set, are these simply the same ad with different colors?
Okay, so one is that if we have one winning ad, we can create 2 to 4 ad variations with those. And so what I was talking about there is like if there is a color palette of blue, we change it with yellow or red. And so those are like 3, 4 variations. And we've done simple things like that. And we'll increase like our CP or improve our CPL by 10, 20%. Like we don't know, like it's completely arbitrary which one is going to hit. So we just put those into the system of dynamic creatives or in the post ID system, like that we're just launching different ads and seeing which one hits. And then in terms of like launching ads, primarily, like I mentioned, we're doing it's just one ad that's dynamic creative, and then it serves all of those ads for you. So technically, like physically in the ad set, there's just one, but the way it gets served, it's a variety of combinations based off of the inputs that you have here that we're talking about of like images, descriptions, headlines, etc.
Great. Awesome. Guys said hi. Hi, buddy. Glad that you joined. You're going to enjoy this when you go back and watch the recording. Teresa said, got it. Thank you. Thank you. You are so welcome, dear. Okay. Let's all go digest this and test it. And this isn't just about us. Like this is all of Team Traffic. Like if you guys have the opportunity to test this stuff, please report back in the group and tag both Nehal and I so that we can the more data points we have about this or around this discussion, the faster that I think we're all going to get to best practices. Even though there are so many variables account to account, I do feel confident that by September, when everything switches over to CBO, we will have a 10-step process or some sort of way to teach you guys best practices for this. That's the goal. So the more feedback we get from you guys, the more data points that we all have to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And please let us know if there's budget sizes that are working better for you, or number of ad sets, or if it's post IDs that are working versus dynamic. It's just that feedback at scale does really help. And we can help each other scale these campaigns. Like I mentioned, we were just starting and we're trying to figure out with $500 budgets. We started with 1,000, went down to $500 budgets, and started from 1,000. Now we're doing anywhere between 5,000 to 7,000 in a pretty short period of time. And we're doing this over and over. And the more you can systemize it, look at what we just did, which is here is how to do a campaign setup of this is the budget, this is ad set, this is how you do the ad level. Then types of ad set testing to do, and then your schedule on when to check in, when to bump, and then whatever your targets are, when to turn things off, to whatever your benchmarks are. And so this can happen super quickly, and what we're trying to optimize for here is less thinking. Because the more thinking you're doing and the more emotions that are involved, we'll all end up making decisions that aren't very sound. And so that's the hardest part. And so this helps with that a little bit. So.
Awesome. All right, my friend, I love talking to you as always. This could go on for hours, but your dog's been having a little party in the back. You haven't seen him, but as the sun's going down, he's like, choo, 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 choo. He needs a walk. He's like, Dad, play with me. But you should go eat food soon.
Wants all the attention.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know, guys, if you guys have any questions. I'm happy to respond after, and looking forward to sharing more what we all learned in this process.
All right, we need to plan my trip down to Colombia to say hi. We've been talking about this for months now, so we might have a live training soon for you guys. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Let us know how we can help you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, bye, my friend. See ya. Bye, Team Traffic. Talk soon.